today we're going to be talking about what are the phases of real estate investing. A lot of people want to get into investing, or people are getting back into the game because they took a break. 2022 was pretty crazy. Yeah, what are the phases and what should people know about investing in real estate right now?
I think most people plan and get ready for too long. One, the first thing to know is just get started. Get moving in real estate investing. Doesn't matter if you house hack, you buy your first home, turn around and rent it, you go buy something with someone else. Just get in the game. If you're in the game, now we're playing. And what I want people to think about is there's three main phases of real estate investing. There is the I'm trying to build this machine and struggling phase. That's phase one. And what I mean by that is it is unbelievably hard to purchase your first 5 properties. And everyone is going to feel the birthing of the baby. You're not going to know where the money's coming from. It's going to be very stressful. That's normal. Okay, you just need to make it to phase 2. The phase 2 is the growth phase. And what happens is somewhere between 5 units to 10 units. All depends on your market, all depends on the cash flow, all depends on the appreciation cycle and the equity that you have. But somewhere in there, once you own 5 to 10 units, and somewhere between years 3 to 5, what happens is your real estate investing starts taking on a life of its own. The cash flow feels like it's going up significantly. The equity is starting to be there. So now I get choices. I can refinance, I can sell and do a 1031, I can do a value add. There's things I can do in order to keep this moving. Maybe I'm lucky enough to even be able to do a development project. What you have to decide before you move into the next phase is, what is my long-term goals for real estate? And what's the timeline for my life and my real estate investing? Because what happens is there is also a point where you get to the debt pay down and I want to defend my kingdom. And that phase will be different for everyone. It'll be different depending on the size of your goals and when you want to start that. So for someone in their 20s, they're not going to hit debt pay down or defend probably until their late 50s, early 60s. If someone's already in their late 50s, early 60s, they may be already in the defend mode, even if they're just getting started, which means instead of going in and buying a multifamily at like 80% loan to value, they may buy a multifamily at 50% or 60% loan to value. So you have to take in your long-term goals and criteria very specifically depending on which phase you are at and where you're at in your life.
One question, you've already bought your first house that you live in, right?
Yep.
And you're curious about, hey, I want to invest. What's kind of an example of your first step if you've got enough to get a loan and you've got enough cash to potentially play with or utilize for a fix and flip, a rental, or potentially even like development building? Is there anything that you would prefer to send people towards
Yes.
on their first deal? Why is that?
The simplest thing for people to do on their first deal, if they already own a home, is keep the first home, move out, and buy a second one. What happens in our consumer society is I want to keep up with the Joneses or the Travises, and I want to go get a bigger house. I want to get this giant McMansion. That beautiful 1,200 square foot Rambler that you currently live in, keep it. And guess what? Go buy another 1,200 square foot Rambler and make a lateral move. Or maybe you move up the property ladder just a little bit and you go buy a 1,500 square foot one. If you can make a couple simple lateral moves, I get my owner occupied interest rate, I get lower mortgage insurance if I don't have the 20% down, and it's easier for me to qualify for it. See, as an investor, I generally have to go put 25% down. My interest rate is anywhere between 0.5 point to 1.5 points higher than that owner-occupied rate. So keep your first one, move out and go buy another one. But don't go buy the McMansion, just move laterally or just slightly up, and then go do it again.
Explain owner-occupied loans,
Yes.
what that is, because you already are doing an owner-occupied if you are in a home right now, but how that relates to investing in your first few properties and the bank looking at that.
The owner-occupied interest rate, very simply, is going to be your lowest interest rate out there. And if you were fortunate enough to put 20% down, you're then also not going to have mortgage insurance. There's no timeline or rule that says how long you have to own or occupy a property. So you could live there for, let's say, a year and then move out and go do it again. Now, you couldn't move in for a week and then move out or never move in. That's called loan fraud. So that's bad. Avoid that one. But you could live there for a while and then move out. What happens then is if I've saved enough and I could qualify again. So let's just run through some simple numbers. Let's say you purchased your first home, FHA, 3.5% down. So I had 3.5% down for that and 3% for the closing costs, and I was able to get the owner-occupied interest rate. If that property just broke even or made a few $100s a month, I would feel very comfortable moving out of that property, especially if it made $200 to $500 a month, and then just going and buying another property. And with the goal being the same thing there. Now, once I have it, one FHA loan, that next one's probably going to have to be conventional. It's going to be 3% down or 5% down. But that's so much better than the investor down, because the investor down starts at 20%, and generally speaking, they want 25. So how many homes could you buy owner occupied? Well, if I put 5% down, I could buy 4 versus one investment property. And then today, if an owner occupied rate is 6.5, that investment rate, for example, is going to then be 7.5. 7.75. It's so much of a huge difference in cash flow. Also, when I get that owner-occupied rate, it's locked up for 30 years. And so especially as things change here in the future and interest rates probably come back down, let's say we're in the upper 4s or mid 5s, that's great long-term debt. Just lock it up. Keep it forever. Save your 6 months worth of reserves. So if that first mortgage payment is $3,000 a month, put $18,000 off to the side just to protect that property in general. I think that's just really wise. And when you go to move to your next one, they're generally going to want to see a lease inked on that property, and they're going to want to see that your debt to income ratio will allow you to qualify for both properties. But it's still so much easier to qualify for that than it is to qualify to go purchase investment property. Because like you said, to the bank, there's a higher default on an investment property rate than there is on an owner-occupied property. So this is more risky, so it's a higher rate. The owner-occupied, lower rate, less risk to them.